Hey, welcome to the Gnarly Girls podcast. Today's episode is called Daddy's Home, and we're gonna get spanked because we've been very, very bad. Sarah's not with me right now, so I'm representing Sarah with this Barbie. We actually forgot to record the intro after we recorded the podcast because I think we blacked out because things got so gnarly. I entered a fever dream personally, and we just couldn't quite come back to space and time to remember, like, oh wait, we gotta record an intro. So I'm doing it right now as a lone human, and I want to remind you we do have a Patreon. It's called the Gnarly People Patreon, which has a vibe and a ring to it, and there's many things we offer, many different tiers. Have you ever wanted to do a workshop with us? Have you ever wanted to get some coaching, creative coaching, becoming a witch coaching, unleashing your innermost wild feral self coaching? Have you ever wanted to have me be your mommy or your daddy? Sarah can be your mommy and your daddy. Point is, there's lots of offerings. Go to the Patreon, check it out. Gnarly People Patreon. It's linked. Obviously, it's linked. Also, can you please rate and review this podcast? Everyone asks that. So I don't think I'm asking you something that you don't know that people need. And if you rate and review this podcast and then screenshot it and DM me your review and it's good and it makes me laugh, I will personally send you one of my t-shirts. Not a t-shirt that I made, an actual t-shirt of mine that I think suits you. So you also have to send me a picture of you. I will send you one of my t-shirts. I think that's actually a pretty cool offering. So I love you. Listen to the podcast, rate it and review it. And then if you have comments, you have requests, let us know. We're really interested in what you think because this podcast is for you. Anyway, let's get ready to get spanked by Daddy together. Welcome to the Gnarly Girls podcast.
What's up, gnarly beings?
This is a loose-lipped, unfiltered, raw dogging, stripping down of culture.
No fucks, no panties. This is a labia of love.
We're your hosts, Tony Naj
and Serafina Supernova, and this is Gnarly Girls.
Daddy's home, and you've been a bad girl, Sarah. Maybe we should spank you.
I'm actually on my period, so I think that would hurt a lot right now. I'm feeling very tender.
All right, I have to say that when Tucker Carlson said that line during the rally, Daddy's home, and the crowd erupted in so much glee, pleasure, and relief, I knew, I was like, wow, this is tapping into a primal need.
Yeah, this was at the Georgia Republican convention, and he also talked about spanking your 15-year-old daughter over your knee. I'm like, this is so kinky. Like, this is porno and pedo.
Porno and pedo.
Yeah.
The spanking of a 15-year-old daughter? That is quite the image. That is definitely something that's on someone's porn search.
Were you spanked?
I was, were you?
No.
Oh.
Mm.
But it was when I was younger, and it is a humiliation. Like, spanking is about humiliation.
Yeah, I mean, I like to be spanked now during sex, but I was not spanked as a kid. And actually, my mom was like the very like radical one in the church that was like, I'm not gonna spank my kids. But like everyone would always be mad at her, like in our church, like social circles, because she was the only one not spanking her children.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's like a thing. Because like it talks about spanking in the Bible. Like leading with an iron, I don't know the Bible quote, something about an iron fist, an iron rod.
An iron fist. Whoa. That definitely brought up some fisting imagery in my mind. Yeah, I just think that, all right, when we think of this archetype of daddy and then doing this act of spanking, there is this dom sub thing. I mean, it could be argued that the dom sub took that imagery from childhood trauma and then is reenacting it as some sort of sexual healing and liberation. Like, that's definitely a vibe. However, I just don't understand how spanking a bare bottom was never inherently sexual. To me, it always feels a little sexual.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the point is that Tucker Carlson is literally saying this at the Republican convention, and everyone's like, "Daddy's home."
Screaming in glee.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say that what we should do is judge that. I want to unpack it.
Yes.
I want to relate to it
Because
because
I like daddy and I like spanking.
I want to unpack this because I think it is. I mean, what I'm noticing about the reactions that everyone's having is that there is so much indignant outrage. And I don't know if we're going to do like healing with that essence. No, I think we need to really look at where is the little girl in you who wants to be spanked by daddy? The 15-year-old girl is not a little girl.
And
But
not
where's
my actual daddy.
a representative of daddy?
Yeah.
No, your actual daddy spanking you at 15 is so upsetting. I don't
My dad would
understand.
never.
It's not, it's pedo, it's incestual, and it's graybo.
Yeah. I mean, maybe my weird uncle, but
My uncle would spank me today, without a doubt.
yeah.
I got some uncles that would spank me.
I've witnessed it.
No, we really got to understand this. So, what do you think, Sarah, is the psychological desire that people are really kind of wanting to be fulfilled when there is this daddy's home to spank the little girl? Because also, he didn't say the sons need to be spanked, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
No, there was a collective cheer at the feminine being spanked, at the
Right.
sexual feminine who's acting out. She's not listening to what daddy said.
He said something like, if your 15-year-old daughter came home and slammed the door in your face, would you just let that happen? Or you would say, would you say, daddy's home? When would you take her and put her over your knee and give her a good spanking? Here's the thing. I think that as a culture, we are addicted to control and being controlled and controlling other people
Yeah.
and other people being controlled because it creates a false sense of security and safety.
I had to touch my breast for that. Yeah, and that is a vibe. I feel like I was trying to protect the screen from my nipples, so I put something there so you didn't see my nipples, but anyway, I was trying to control you wanting to control my nipples because the amount of people that have talked about my nipples.
You got good nips.
Thank you.
Sometimes us are just blessed.
But it's been since high school. There's been a lot of nipple talk. But going back to what you're saying, this controlling ethos is bipartisan.
Yeah.
I see it on both sides, people being very controlling psychologically towards each other. So, this desire to control and be controlled is, I think, a political issue because ultimately, what we do not want to do is admit the horrendous truth that we are in control because that's upsetting.
It's a lot of
Responsibility.
responsibility, the ability to respond. In order to be responsible, we have to not be in perpetually reactive states, which I think is really hard with everything coming at us and in us and all around us, and pesticides and news and propaganda. I mean, it's a lot to be like, oh, I'm just gonna regulate my nervous system and just be in a responsive relationship with my life. Like, I do support and preach and teach that and try to practice that. But that is incredibly challenging.
No. And this is something that I think is the most, you know, thick and juicy thing that we could actually start unpacking is that when we take radical responsibility for ourselves and when we admit that we are actually in control, then there is the birth of like genuine autonomy. But I understand why that's so scary because for me, as someone who is a self-produced artist, I don't have an agent. I don't have a daddy. I don't have a mommy. I have no one who's like, well, Tony, let's do this now and let me help you. In fact, I have the opposite. I feel like I have truly the opposite. And so I have to be the one who is the propeller for my life, my art, my career. There's no one that's pulling me along or hiring me. I have to be like, "Do you want me? Do you want me?" over and over and over again. And I understand this desire for a daddy slash mommy to help is because I want that. All I want is for someone to help me and support me and to say, Tony, I see you. You're so talented and you're so wonderful. And let me do all the stuff that you don't want to do. And let me take care of you. And let me make this easy for you so you can just be yourself.
Well, and let me make this clear. If there is a daddy listening, regardless of your gender, who wants to support the Gnarly Girls podcast, we do have
We do
Venmo
want
and Cash
daddy.
App. And but here's the thing, I want the redistribution of resources for essential art and conversations. And I want that resource without this emotional, physical, codependent obligation to fulfill needs that I don't want to fulfill. I just want the money.
Well, okay, so that's a lot of people just want the money and
Yeah.
they don't want the emotional baggage to go with the money. So it's like when we go back to this desire for daddy's home to spank us and to put us in our place, it's also to take away this burden of responsibility. It's also to take away the burden of autonomy. Like that is, I think, what that gleeful cheer was. It was like, oh, relief.
Yeah.
It was
Save
genuine
us.
relief because going back to my own personal story, going back to me, I too want to be saved because it is a lot of work to just continually put yourself out there and be responsible for your own being.
Well, and then also, like, Tucker Carlson is like a masso Christian Christo, and the Christians are always talking about Jesus coming to save them, to
Yeah.
save them, to save them. We've talked about this in other episodes, like how it is so controlling to program into people that they are born sinners and then they have to be saved by this man in order to access God.
So sorry to interrupt,
No,
but
please do.
it's almost like what that promise is saying, you don't have to self-reflect. You don't have to forgive yourself. You don't have to go through that deep emotional tearing apart of everything you are in order to find self-compassion. No, Jesus will do it for you. An external force will forgive you. The priest will forgive you.
Yeah, you have to ask for Jesus's forgiveness versus my experience of ascended masters is they're just like, how can we help you?
Forgive yourself.
Yeah, how can we help you be curious enough about yourself to ask the questions that lead to a genuine sense of compassion that eventually leads to self forgiveness. I mean, oh my gosh, I will say, I feel like self. I have cultivated a well of self compassion within me that I'm always trying to grow. Self forgiveness feels like this extension and response to self compassion that feels like really new territory for me.
Mm. Mhm.
Even though it's been a meditation of mine for a long time, it's just like self-forgiveness is so huge.
It's so huge. And I think that it's the hardest thing to do because with self forgiveness, you have to also forgive others. You also have to forgive the culture. It's not just something you can posture, it's something you must truly embody. And I think that is where there is this collective desire to be saved that, again, is bipartisan. Again, it's like every time I speak out against either party, and authority and the system of capitalism and the system of our political system being controlled by capitalism, people get angry at me. They get angry at me when I question capitalism because capitalism is also this it's a container of agreement, right? So if we're all agreeing on capital, then I give you this I take your
Mm,
octopussy.
don't take it.
But what is the value of the octopussy that you have right here? She's holding an octopus if you're not watching. It's like there is a price. Sarah doesn't want me to just take the octopussy from her, but if I gave her $5,000, I probably if I gave her 50 bucks knowing Sarah, she'd give it to me.
No.
What about 75?
Right now?
Yeah.
No.
150.
500 at least.
But you're negotiating because you think that I I don't want the octopussy that bad. I guess this is the point, right? Is we use capitalism as a negotiation tool to not actually have to talk to each other and to not actually have to value each other.
Yeah. Okay, there's multiple things coming forward. I do want to say that there was also a lot of mamala rhetoric,
Right,
which I
right.
believe was sparked by Drew Barrymore, who I
Right.
also believe was a victim of pedo and assault in Hollywood. I mean, she talks a lot about being offered her first drink when she was very, very young
Yeah.
in that space. And then, I'm a touchy person depending on who the person and my mood and the moon, but like she is always petting people on her show. She is
Yeah, very
petting.
touchy.
And I actually was just watching this video of her yesterday where she was petting Martha Stewart and Martha Stewart pushed her off of her.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I forgot to tell you this. And then Martha Stewart was like, "You're the wrong gender." And then I went down a TikTok hole on that because I
Martha
was
Stewart definitely.
yeah, no, Martha Stewart. I would actually we played
Fuck,
Mary
Marry,
Kill for
Kill.
3 hours and I think we both chose to fuck Martha Stewart.
Yeah, I would hump her butt.
She's
I
hot.
would drive, but
But
she's
what
also pedo
right,
pedo.
she's
She's
pedo
definitely
pedo,
pedo
and I
pedo.
think why she's hot is because she's control there's a controlling element to her.
Yeah.
And I think
Well, maybe not pedo, but great boat, because she's at the Diddy parties. But
Yeah.
but the Diddy parties are pedo.
right. So the point is like there is this daddy rhetoric around Trump, et cetera, and Tucker Carlson is such like a daddy, and like JD Vance. It's like
But
all
would
these.
you fuck Tucker Carlson?
Absolutely not. I think in Fuck Mary Kill, I chose to kill Tucker Carlson.
I think I did choose to fuck him.
You did.
I think I did. Yeah.
He does have like a 90s sitcom dad energy, but there's something about him that I'm just like. Anyways,
I would have to be on top.
yeah, for sure. The point he probably has a nice kuka.
Tucker Carlson,
Cuckoo!
will you show us? Show us your kuka.
Send us a dotty pic. The point is, people were like, "Mamala, mamala,
Mama.
Mama,
Mama,
so they
you
also
breastfeed me. We do. We want our parents so deeply to accept us, to see us, and save us. That is the problem. That is why, like, healing our mother wound, healing our father wound, becoming our own parents is so important because that is when you do take radical responsibility for your own being.
Yes.
I've definitely fallen through the rabbit hole, and I think it's an important part of aging is when you understand and you look at your program, re-understand. Are you thinking of fucking him still?
Yes. So many people are.
Oh, pause this now and go through a little visualization of me and Tucker. I'm on top.
And picture me and Martha.
Yeah, picture Sarah and Martha and me and
I
Tucker
would
at
love
deep
Martha
sexual
Stewart
healing.
to spank me in her garden.
In
With
her garden.
with her flowers, very gentle.
Oh, yeah, no thorns.
While I free bleed into her rose bed.
Oh, that's actually a beautiful, and you heal her.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing. Like, I'm a kinky bitch and witch. Like, catch me in a dungeon when I have enough money to go there. Like I'm into it. Also, I would love to do some domination work in a dungeon. I am very pro all of the things, but I think something that's interesting about that world is people say
Wait, Dungeon World?
Dungeon World.
Okay, yeah.
And BDSM. People say that the sub is actually the one in control.
Yeah.
But I think so rarely that is actually happening. I think there are like trauma informed like queer like spaces where that is happening, but I don't think it's happening as often as it should be happening.
Yeah, I mean, that's
And does the sub actually want that? You know, like these are I am no BDSM expert, but these are just things I think about. Like in a true subspace, like I know you're setting boundaries. I know that you're having safe words, but like when I really tap into my subbiest sub, which like does it access the most codependent part of me or the part of me that didn't get loved or what she needed or was assaulted, I'm like, I actually want the Dom to psychically know what I need. I don't even want to have to know what my needs are. And I'm not saying that's healthy or that's right, but I'm just admitting that
that's your
if
experience.
I feel that way, there's got to be other people that feel that way. And I wonder if that's how people feel politically. It's like Kamala's going to know what I want and need. Trump is going to know what I want and need,
Mhm.
and then I'm not even going to know what I want and need. And
Mhm.
I think I want that because I'm just so tired from my complex trauma. And I think the world just feels so tired. And so they don't want to have to know what they need or know what we need. And so they're just like, Mommy, Daddy, drop me.
No, I really relate to that, especially when I was in my 20s and I had been in a relationship my whole life. I was in a relationship all through high school, relationship all through college, relationship all through my 20s. And so every decision I made, I was always making that decision within the lens of how is this boy going to feel? Because I was in relationships with boys. So, like, him and his needs and his desires and his, uh, interest in controlling me, they were all part of how I made decisions. And I've really rarely been single, and it felt very untethered to be single and be like, wait, I just make my own decisions. Wait, what do I want to do? That was so disorienting for me. And I even think in a weird way, I was doing it with my whole childhood, with my family. Like everything I wanted, I was looking at it through the lens of how is what I want to do going to impact other people.
Yeah.
I've had a very hard time
Yeah.
connecting purely to just what I want. That is not always accessible to me. And the only way it is accessible to me is through this language of my career. I don't know about my emotional self because so much of my emotional self is just like, well, let's do what's best for the community around me and just coming to peace with that. But I also do think that's a vibe.
Well, and that is your Venus. That is your Venus. Tony's Venus is in Aquarius, and my friend Megan, who is an astrologer, taught me that Venus, our Venus placement, is our personal call from the goddess. So this
Mm.
is a fun thing for everyone to look up. Go look up your Venus code, and that's your personal love letter from the goddess, and what the goddess is saying. This is how you are meant to interact with life as as an expression of love and devotion to me and all of life. So yours is in Aquarius, so it makes sense that you're tuning in with the community. Mine is in Pisces, so I'm just always channeling and feeling.
Yeah. So going back to Trumpo Tucker Carlson and this current paradigm that we're in, is that I think that in order for us to genuinely address our political system, it is going to be about tending to the collective wound we all have around wanting someone to save, see, forgive us. And so that has a religious, spiritual connotation, as we were just talking about with like this, deep roots in Christianity and other Abrahamic religions. And so, what is the most radical thing that we can do is developing a spiritual practice around self forgiveness and around forgiving our parents. That's the other thing that I was trying to talk about is that I have definitely gone. Oh, yeah, we were distracted by me fucking Tucker Carlson, which I just did again. But in my mind,
I'm kind of like,
but, like, I think it's very important for us to go through the psychological process of understanding our conditioning that our parents wash into our hair. I definitely do think that. So we all go through this moment of wanting to understand how our parents impacted our psychology, both positively and negatively.
I mean, every day I woke up thinking about that this morning, literally.
But at the same time, like, I think the biggest realization for me around that topic was all of these things that I complained about that my parents did. Let's just use one, emotional neglect. I felt like I was like very emotionally neglected. However, I also have a deep ability to pick myself back up again. I don't actually expect anyone else to quote unquote make me feel better. If I'm really desperate and sad or depressed or self loathing or all of these things, I do go inside I mean, maybe it's my own self-soothing, and it's a little lonely and sad because truly no one can console me. No one can console me, but I eventually do console the self, and I do pick myself up.
Well, and
Dust
this is
yourself off and
evolution.
try again, and you can
Dun,
dust
dun,
it off
off
and
and
try
try
again.
again, try again.
And so, like, I like that about myself. I actually genuinely do like that about myself, and I wouldn't have had that ability if my parents were more available to me emotionally. Same thing, I thought they neglected me with time and space, like they never knew where I was, but I'm also incredibly independent. I can travel anywhere and I can feel really safe in my own skin regardless of where I am, maybe even to a fault at times, but I really do feel quite safe.
And I'm always like, Tony, did you lock the car? Did you lock the car? Did you lock the car? Yeah, it's giving alchemy, it's giving alchemist, and also like soul agreement. Like if we want to go into that territory of like, I made a soul agreement to enter this family and this lineage and scoop up this trauma and karma, and then I'm gonna heal it and spin it into gold and turn it into power so that I can heal myself in the world. Like relate. Relate. I also felt very neglected. I felt neglected even this morning when I woke up.
Oh, but then I tended to you.
Yeah, you did. Well, actually, I woke up, I was feeling sad because Tony's mom texted us and asked us about how the show went. And my mom didn't text me and ask me about how the show went. And I've got a lot of mommy stuff for sure. I think I would say I almost have more mommy stuff than daddy stuff, but I think my daddy stuff is just different. Anyways, and not, it's never really enough about me. I was going to say enough about me, but I don't mean that because I'm about to tell you more about me. So I was meditating before I then came to meditate with Tony in my solo meditation. And I've been having this like thyroid estrogen dominance thing
Mm.
going on. And I was just like talking to the estrogen in my body because this is something that Tony and I both deeply resonate and believe and bring into our somatic healing workshop, Claim Yourself, which you should totally try to come to in person, or join us on the Patreon for somatic shakes. We talk a lot about, okay, our bodies are communicating messages to us through any ailments that are happening. So I'm having this estrogen dominance thing. I've been diagnosed with an autoimmune thyroid condition for many years now, and I'm going through this flare right now. So I was talking to the estrogen and I was like, oh, I think my estrogen overproduction is my body trying to mother itself from the
Mm.
inside. Like the estrogen is like this extra comfort and padding and feminine energy that's my body trying to take care of itself.
Mm.
And how sweet and powerful, and what a powerful way for me to practice self-forgiveness around my body, that and I feel really frustrated around my body right now. And then I was like, wow, so maybe if I practice more genuine self-mothering, even if I think I've already done that, but I've already done that, but I've already tried that. Like, how many times do I go into that space of like, but I've already taken those herbs, but I've already gone down that healing path. No, I've already tried that. And it's like, well, bitch, maybe you need to try again from a different point in consciousness. So I was like, yeah, fucking self-mothering is not new news to me, bitches, okay? But I can see where self-mothering from a different point in consciousness, because we are changing and evolving every day, could potentially help my estrogen dominance so that my body doesn't feel the need to produce this estrogen, because really it's just trying to protect me.
Respect. And I also want to talk about estrogen and my tits because I also am estrogen dominant and have low progesterone, but I also have a lot of testosterone. Not to
I
brag.
have low testy.
I have high testy. High testy, high
That's
esty.
why I can't set boundaries.
High testy, high esty, low progesty. But I've always, or I don't want to talk shit about myself, but I took birth control pills from the age 15 to 25, really, really messed up my hormonal system. And I have been having very sore boobs recently, and I did a video about it because I do think talking about the mothering and the mothering of the self, I do think there's such an assault on mother energy right now. And it is connected to Trumpo Tucker Carlson because that was an attack on the feminine.
Yeah.
When he said that the 15-year-old girl needed to get spanked. It was not taking any accountability for the masculine influence on what's happening in the world right now. It's just like these little girls that are acting out because they're speaking. And when I think about the Geno and all these women and children who are being murdered, and I also think about how October 7th, that was an attack also on women.
Yeah.
So it's like there's been so much attack of women, and my tits are so sore. And everyone's like, oh, you're like very, and now I get to do a voice. But if one more fucking person dares to tell me what I'm experiencing with my hormones, I will shit in my own mouth. Okay. Like, honestly, if I'm going through perimenopause, I'll let you fucking know. All right. That is not what I'm talking about. I am having a breast reaction to the violence against women. Like, it's not about like, "Ugh, I'm gonna have a perimenopause for 10 years." I mean, that narrative to me, we have to do a whole fertility episode. That narrative to me takes me out of the collective suffering of women. My sore tits is because women and children are being brutally murdered thanks to the US of A and our political foreign policy. And my tits are weeping by being bouncy and cute. I mean, these are very cute, but they hurt. And there's a sadness to my large bosom that hurts. Every morning I wake up and they're heavy and they hurt because my heart is breaking for the women and children who are being brutally murdered by our Geno
Yeah.
that I am inadvertently funding. And I am not going to have anyone tell me that's not why my tits hurt. And if you even try, there will be urine
Yeah, mine
into my own eye. I will somehow piss into my own eye. I'll be so sad.
that's such a like, what if that was your goddess extraction? You're just shitting into your own mouth and peeing
Pissing in my own eye. 'Cause I don't want to do it to someone else because I understand it's like the projection, so many projection. I understand why people say that to me, but it really irritates me because I'll tell you about my fucking hormonal journey when I'm experiencing it. And that wasn't my point. My point is about collective female suffering.
And the addiction to diagnostic culture is the same
I got really smelly.
is the same thing. The addiction to diagnostic culture is the same consciousness that is addicted to political identities.
Uh-huh.
Our identity has got to be larger than what we align ourselves with and what's wrong with us. We have to come to our identity from a new point in consciousness that doesn't have to do with how
Diagnosis.
yeah, and how we're mutually, individually, collectively suffering. Um, I think that, I mean, I feel like we almost talk about this on every episode. Like, all of these things can be reference points, diagnoses, political parties, labels. They can all be a reference point to
A touchstone, yeah.
a touchstone to get somewhere. But we have to start going deeper. We have to start going deeper.
Because okay.
Oh, sorry, I had another thing.
Yeah.
I had another thing. Because we also the tolerance.
Your hands are freezing. Stop
Oh,
touching me.
that's a hypothyroidism thing.
It's like
Speaking of diagnoses,
truly, it's like she's not even
no,
alive.
touch my foot.
The hands are like the hands of a corpse. The hands were so, she touched my shoulder and chills through my, no, honestly, dude, you are so cold.
Well, see, it's because I have hypothyroidism and that's why I'm fucked up. But you know what I mean? I'm like, okay, yeah, that's helpful because I do know that like coldness and being cold and poor circulation and all of that, it has to do with hypothyroidism. But who came up with that term and do they care about me or do they just want me to be on Synthroid? Because I don't want to be on Synthroid and I won't be on Synthroid and no judgment if you are, but that's not my path because I'm here to get to the root. And also, though, we have to practice tolerance. So I don't judge you if you're on Synthroid. Like practicing tolerance.
Yeah.
That was connected to something else that you said
If
earlier.
you touch me with those
I was
cork hands again, I will, I will be very sad. No, they're like cold to the bone.
And my feet feel really cold right now. I do sort of feel dead. I wonder
Yeah.
if that's disassociation. Let me just massage the blood back into my feet.
Please.
I guess I need more chi in my extremities.
Well, I also
Tolerance.
I have a circulation thing too, but it's a different I've been told it's a blood disease, I can't remember what it's called.
I probably also have that blood disease.
But I'll get, like, my blood I prefer the Chinese traditional Chinese medicine because she'll just say to me, "Your blood is weak." I like that so much more than a diagnosis. I
Because
remember
it's
because 'cause
not
I've
a
been told
final
yeah,
thing.
just like your blood is weak versus like this genetic disorder that I have. But basically, what happens is I get so cold, and then my hands become claws like this, and then they won't. They won't. Well, you can't see if you're not watching, but they become claws, like kind of like a dinosaur claw, and then I can't. I can't move my hands. So if I go for a hike and then I have to take off my boots, I can't. Or if I have to smoke a joint, I can't. Like someone has to hold it for me because I actually
Oh,
can't.
we've been
I once
sober for so many
no,
months.
that's another episode, but
Oh,
I once was trying to, like, eat a sandwich with my hands like this, and someone had to feed it to me. So, I understand, I've been diagnosed with so many autoimmune things, the Epstein so many, it's actually makes
Coxsackie virus.
Epstein-Barr,
I
Coxsackie, Sarah has Coxsackie,
I also have
Coxsackie?
Epstein-Barr.
Ugh. Yeah, I was once told I had the blood work of an 80-year-old woman.
So tolerating all of this information, right? Tolerating each other, tolerating people with different opinions, tolerating people with different ideas. I do think that
Oh,
to-
yes,
tolerance
tolerance.
is a part of the medicine for how we meet so much desire to control. I think we're at such a low tolerance of our ability to tolerate chemicals. I mean, everyone is getting so sick. We can't tolerate things on the news. We can't tolerate other
Mm.
people's opinions. We have such a low tolerance, and from a nervous system perspective, that is a sign of dysregulation. We are in collective dysregulation and our tolerance is so low. I'm so sorry I've been covering these up. I'm like, don't look. I gotta let this octopus see you.
Yeah, no, I love this idea around building tolerance. And I also talk a lot about building a pain tolerance because I experience chronic pain. I'm always in pain. So after a while, I kind of was like, maybe the vibe for me is just to build my pain tolerance. So the chronic pain bothers me less. Spoken like a true Capricorn. But I do try to address my pain. It's not as if I don't do it. I think I do a lot of quote unquote self-care and I go to a lot of witches to try to heal. It's not about not going through the process of healing. It's about holding both things to be true at the same time. Is that you could be going through a healing process and pain can still be part of your life. And just because pain is part of my life doesn't mean I'm not healing. I am healing, but pain is still a part of my life, physical and emotional. And I think that that is a lot. I mean, that is why I really do recommend everyone study Buddhist philosophy just as another touchstone and reference point, because I think that Buddhist philosophy as a spiritual teaching is about your relationship to your mind and your relationship to your body. And it actually isn't a religion. Technically, it is a philosophy. I just want everyone to study philosophy more of all times, of all types,
I think a nice
and all times. More philosophy. And that is what's being pulled out of schools. We have to get back to daddy's home and Trumpy
We
Trumpa.
do, and I just want to say a nice Buddhist portal is Kuan Yin because they, I feel like, is a just a good friend and mentor to enter the portal of Buddhism from a more feminine frequency. Shout out to Kuan Yin.
I love that because I do think a lot of quote unquote self help is repurposed Buddhism. And I think it's really important if you are on a journey of healing, you're going to come across a lot of people that are um, repackaging Buddhist philosophy for you. So the more versed you are in the traditional Buddhist philosophy, the more you will be able to add to the conversation versus just kind of getting a watered down version. Because that is what a lot of I think self-help is. It's a watered down version of
Yeah,
Buddhism.
Thich Nhat Hanh is also a friend. I also feel like Thich Nhat Hanh has really good, like accessible teachings around how to breathe and meditation that's just like really simple and not hierarchical and not just like out there. I mean, Thich Nhat Hanh can be my daddy and spiritually spank me any day.
Okay, this really is what brought me to something. All right. Buddhism is pretty fucking boring if you ask me. And I say that with all the respect in the world. as a white person. It really brings me to the edge of boredom.
It's not fancy.
It is not fancy. So I am recognizing my whiteness in this here now moment to say that my experience with Buddhism, even though it has been the most important practice of my life, without a doubt, it has pushed my face in boredom so deeply because it's asking you to sit with yourself and it's asking you to sit in meditation and it's asking you to do the discipline of training your mind, which is hard and it's boring and it's upsetting. Again, I know I've talked about my silent retreats. They've been the hardest thing I've ever done and the most important things I've ever done. Period, period, period. So I want to recognize that as a white person experiencing Buddhism and looking at it from the outside, which is the only thing that I can do, and I will do it with all the respect in my heart. I think that it is hard to get white people interested into Buddhism because of how hard it is and how white people have been conditioned to really also seek pleasure. And even though I do think that Christianity, which is a whitey white religion at this here now moment, not only because I know we've colonized the world with Christianity, but I do think Christianity is really based in whiteness. And that's like, it's almost like pushing an undercurrent of pleasure, but that pleasure is also something to feel shameful about and to feel guilty about. But the undercurrent of pleasure is there because think about like Trump is positioned as a Christian and he's all about pleasure. And even like the Tucker Carlson thing with the spanking, there is this like pleasure element to it, but also the shame. And it's so interesting how pleasure has been like integrated as what white people really seem to want because they want their fast food gives pleasure. They want their TV. They want their podcast to be a girl who talks about spitting on a dick. Like that is the number 3 podcast. The girl who said Haktua. She said Haktua because she wanted to get a dick wet. And she then went to the Republican National Convention and they put her on as an icon, which is again, Republicans are very much intertwined in Christianity. Not the left wing, not the quote unquote Democrats or progressives, but the Christianity is with the Republicans. And so the conservative people are saying that their number 3 podcast is about a girl who spits on a dick. I mean, we have got to really look at that because pleasure is a part of whiteness. And then the guilt around pleasure is a part of whiteness
Yeah. And I mean,
and conservativeness, but not all conservatives are white. I'm not saying that, but the whiteness is driving the conservative culture in America, not in the other conservative lands, because there's a lots of conservative lands that aren't white.
you can't have Christianity without a colonizer mindset. It's literally like an evangelical, like missionary conversion mindset. It has an undercurrent and an underbelly of converting people. There's also a chosen one element, like which is also inherently very white supremacist. And so even if you're not a white person, you can be loyal to that system of oppression.
But people, I think almost all races like a chosen one. There's always a messiah.
Right.
But I just like the pleasure aspect because I do find that like what Buddhism is asking people for is a type of discipline that is not pleasure based. I've never read Buddhist scripture where it's like, I'm like, well, that sounds
No,
really.
in fact, like my gripe with some Buddhist practice is that it's too masculine and it demonizes pleasure. Like I've found that there's a similar in not all teachings, but in certain spaces, or honestly, white people who are teaching about Buddhism,
Yeah.
maybe it's a misunderstanding of the
Mm,
translation of the teaching because it's
mm,
similar to like the Christian sin. It like
yeah.
all comes back to the same space of wanting
If
to
you
control
get those
people and being right.
hands off of me, Sarah. These gold. Yes, wanting to control people and being right. Yes.
Oh, it feels
Yeah.
so good for my womb.
Well, this other part of you is very warm. This is very true. Wanting to control people, wanting to be right, and
I'm so
where does
tired of people wanting to be right. It's
but
so
you love being right.
boring.
You love being
Well, I'm
right.
right a lot of times.
But do you remember just the other day you were right a couple times with me and you really rubbed it in my face.
Oh, you
I
That
love
the
being right.
opposite
No,
happens.
no, no. First of all, if I'm right, I'm rubbing it in your face without a doubt. But you also.
No, I was right, and then you rubbed it in your own
Own
face. That's actually what happened.
No, I was like, you were right.
Yeah, and you kept rubbing your own
Own
face
face with
in
your
it.
rightness.
I was just silently like, "I'm correct."
I
'Cause I'm a
love being
perfect princess.
I love being right. And you're right, I was right. You're see, I just did
But
it
here's the
again.
thing, we are right a lot, and a lot of people aren't right a lot, and I don't care how that makes us come off because we both actually are correct
Oh,
a
I'm
lot.
right about
And
all
I've
sorts
earned
of
this
things.
over lifetimes, and if you don't fuck with that, then I don't fuck with you, and you don't even need to listen to this fucking podcast because I don't give a fuck.
No, yeah, I get it because I'm right about people's lives a lot, but right about my own life, no. And I do have, I think, really good intuition about the lives of others. But I think that like the place of pleasure within our devotional practice is important. It is important, and I don't know of any philosophy, I mean, I do think, like, tantric philosophy is kind of interesting. Tantric is not just about, fucking, if that's what you thought. No, it is a more complex, philosophy. I do think that the tantric philosophy is kind of looking at duality and complexity and juxtaposition. I do think pleasure is a part of it, but something about some of that tantra stuff, I'm like, it also feels dogmatic.
Here's what I think as a white person who has studied these things. Um, I feel like approaching Tantra without first approaching a classical, boring, nervous system regulated Buddhist practice is
Mhm.
where we get into Burning Man Kundalini love burn
Yes.
trouble.
Yeah, yeah.
Because Tantra is about noticing the senses. But if you
Mhm.
put too much energy in the senses and celebrating the magical of the mundane before you've erased the whiteboard of the nervous system, it's just going to get really confused.
Mhm. That's a great
And
point, yeah.
I have not figured it out. I wouldn't say I practice Buddhism or Tantra. I'm just aware of these philosophies, ways of approaching life, spiritual practices, and I have studied them and I have practiced them, but they're not I don't like talk about Buddhism and Tantra on a daily basis. I'm just aware they're in my purview.
Yeah, and I think that's another really important thing to, say is that, white women, what are we doing? We're exposing ourselves to education. We're exposing ourselves to knowledge bases. We're exposing ourselves to information. And through that, there is always going to be a contextual veil because we're looking at these things from the outside. And that is just what it is. And I don't think ignoring that or pretending that's not happening or um putting too much value on it is going to be beneficial because ultimately we do live in a global society and it's like Socrates traveled the world and then he learned from all these women and then he comes back to Greece and he's like these are all my ideas. And I think that's the problem. It's the co-opting of information as if everything just like came from me. No, we are all recycling information and knowledge that we are accruing from others. Everything that comes out of my mouth is a culmination of all the things that I've been exposed to. And therefore, I should never hold myself up to any pedestal thinking that like my quote unquote teachings or my informations are of any more value. My distillation is just a conglomeration of all the information I've been exposed to. And the only unique thing about it is the fact that I'm combining information through the lens that I am speaking through. And that's what makes us interesting, or that's what makes us quote unquote unique. But since we're all doing that, it's not that interesting and it's not that unique. And I think that when we take too much ownership of our ideas and we take too much ownership of how we present information, that's when you get into this guru space where you think you're
Right.
better than others versus I'm just a human like any other human who's sharing information. Like we're all sharing information, and every information that is being shared has a sense of value because we are all giving it value.
Yeah, like being a guru or seeking a guru is a problem.
And that goes back to daddy and daddy being home and this conversation around, I think, this conservative agenda of the daddy's home as if you don't have to be political anymore, as if you don't have to be concerned. I mean, the amount of people that were saying, well, this doesn't really affect me. This doesn't really affect me. I don't really care who wins because it doesn't really affect me. And let me just say, to be clear, if I have lactose intolerance, does that affect you? Not until we're in an elevator together and I'm shitting my pants and my fecal matter is going in your mouth and nose. And then you'll realize my lactose intolerance does have an impact on you. Our suffering impacts everyone energetically and with flatulent matter. You know what I mean?
I just ate my own snot by accident.
But it's like
got lipstick everywhere.
to say that other people's suffering doesn't impact you is the most misinformed thing you could possibly think. To think that the suffering of Palestinian women and Palestinian children is not going to impact you is incorrect. To think that the queer people or the people that are being marginalized or anyone that is being hated on by the conservative party, to think that that's not going to impact you is just incorrect. So, from the most selfish perspective, practicing genuine tolerance and practicing genuine love and compassion, that is the best thing for you. That is the most selfish thing you could do, actually, and the most selfless.
Also, we joked a lot about being correct, which we are a lot about what other people need because that is our gift and we are healers and channels. But also, we don't know what other people need. And I think what I actually try to do, jokes aside, as a guide is guide people to their own answers because I don't want
The
people.
responsibility.
I don't
Yeah.
want people to ever want to work with me because they want an answer from me. I want them to want to work with me because I'm really good at facilitating a space where they can get in touch with their own answers. And this is where it comes back to genuinely wanting sovereignty for myself and to be able to self-govern myself and wanting other people to be able to self-govern.
The desire to control others comes from feeling out of control yourself. And that when people, you can think of yourself as a Democrat, you can think of yourself as a supporter of progressive values. But when you are in a paradigm of still wanting to control others, how does that actually differentiate you from the right wing? Mentality that you're judging. It's actually the same vibration, it's the same texture. And I think a lot of people, they don't wanna see, it's like it's easier to see how we're different, but what's more valuable is to see how we're the same. That is where the value is. And so everything that we're, looking at when it comes to conservative values or liberal values, which, often are tied into neoliberal values, is still looking for an outside force to be the answer versus
Yes.
the inside. And I think my issue with this entire election was that regardless of the choice, the genocide was going to continue. And so I do not feel that the lives of American people are the priority at this current conversation. I believe that the lives that we're impacting as Americans and our foreign policy in the global south, as we actually use slave labor and we completely exploit all these resources, to me, those lives are the priority. To me, the lives in the Middle East that we've so deeply interfered with. I mean, Saudi Arabia, that was a feminist country. Iran in the 70s, like you can look at photographs of these countries before we put in our puppet dictators, before we put in these people in order to control the oil market. The war against women in the Middle East is very connected to our foreign policy. And then we're afraid of what's going to happen to women here. What have we done to women in the world? So I think that when we talk about the conservative agenda and the neoliberal agenda, in both cases, they're making us self orient as if we as Americans are more important when what America has done to the globe is actually the most important
Yeah.
conversation to be having. Our foreign policy is more important than our domestic policy. It is. And yes, we could say, but if our domestic policy was better, we'd all have the energy and the right food and the energy to care about our foreign policy. That is an argument that is reasonable to a certain extent. However, we're voting against our own interests with our domestic policy, and we have to actually be the answers. We can't expect for someone else to fix our domestic policy in order for us to take full accountability for our foreign policy. It has to start with us. It has to start now. It has to start today. And we have to figure out how to alchemize our food and alchemize our chemicals and the chemtrails and yada, yada, yada. So we are healthy enough to care more about our impact on the world than we do about ourselves.
And I think what's happening right now with fucking stupid ass cock-sucking daddy being back, and actually he's not even, I wish
Mm.
Donald Trump sucked dick. I actually think sucking some dick would be so good for Donald Trump if he really just let his tongue meridian get activated and his pelvic floor get activated by that dick sucking. I think he would have a Kundalini awakening, and I am praying for that. This second term, there's too much urgency for us to like not stand on our feet, activate our inner wolf, and like fucking walk forward.
Yeah.
And to have hard conversations and to put ourselves on the line and to not make our politics our identity because the two-party system is broken and there's nowhere to hide.
There's nowhere to hide. The system is broken, and I understand with the deepest part of my bowels why some people don't want to see that or don't want to feel that or don't want that to be the case. I also don't want that to be the case, but it is the case, at least in my personal opinion. And even though there was a genuine fear, heartbreak, sadness, confusion when I fully let myself swallow that, I think now my mouth is open because I've swallowed it, right? And if we're going to open our mouths, we have to swallow the truth.
And directing the anger directed at other people, like these people who voted Trump in are the problem. It it doesn't touch the deeper sacred rage that's going to make you do the lion's breath, that's going to
Mhm.
let that sacred anger and rage put you into direct action.
As long as we're blaming, we're not self-reflecting.
Right.
As long as we have someone to blame, then we don't have to look at how our own actions contributed. And so I think the message of this podcast, because I do have to go pick up my child in 4 minutes and I have to wear this outfit, which is a tutu with a crown,
And I'm
and
bleeding everywhere.
is we have to just recognize that every time we blame, we don't take personal accountability. And we must take personal accountability every single day in our personal lives and in our political lives. I love you, Sarah. Kiss. Our animals are kissing, not us.